Okay, so number one, and I think we'll start with Paul. What safety protocols are in place and what are must-do items for every facility? Paul, you want to start in that conversation?
I sure can. And I'm just going to start by saying that this is a huge topic in and of itself, and one that at some point you have to walk each facility and make sure it's making sense with each location. I know with the 15 Ys throughout the valley, we have the basic protocols, and then every facility has to be walked separately to make sure that they're being applied in the manner that makes the most sense with that setup. So some basic things are, temperature checks for staff. Right now we are members only, so no guest. And anybody who's coming into the building that's not a member checking in will also have to be logged in. And like if they're a vendor working on AC or something, we're doing temperature checks of that. We're not temperature checking members, but just staff at this point. Cleaning protocols, of course, need to be documented and kind of set up on when do they happen. What are you cleaning on it? How is it being done? Making sure that there are ample supply for members to clean. So we're not doing towels. We're doing paper towel or the gym wipes, depending on where part of the facility and that kind of stuff. Making sure that social distancing protocol is enforced. So we are really going one way in and one way out. And we're asking everybody to actually check out, which is a change for most fitness facilities. Mm-hmm. That has to do with capacity to make sure that we're not overcrowding so that we have ample space. So it's right now we're at 5 to 1,000 square foot. We're going to increase to 10 is the next level, and that can keep kind of going, but it gives us a bar to start from. And then that's not counting our staff. So that's the member count, because the recommendations are a little bit higher than that, but we want a little bit more conservative to start with. Other things are paying attention to water fountains. They're a non-thing right now. The only thing that's open on our water fountains is the bottle fillers, to just trying to keep people safe, because it's not something somebody would even think about or intend to do, but they're going to go over and use the water fountain and then realize, oh my gosh, somebody else just did that too. And then just making sure that we are spacing people in the facility physically. So every other piece of cardio equipment is actually off. And then we rotate those every day, so that it might be treadmills 1, 3, and 5 are on today, and tomorrow it's 2, 4, and 6, just to make sure that there's ample space between people coming in. And then the other big thing is understanding when to enforce things and when not to. If a couple comes in that lives together and rode in the same car there, you don't necessarily need to space them in the same way that you do that other people are. So I think that there's some common sense things that go into how these are all enforced and maintained to make sure that we are being as safe as possible. We actually have probably about a 25-page document on all the different safety protocols. Being a Y with the childcare and all the different areas, we're looking at a lot of different things and have a lot of different agencies that are putting their kind of thoughts on how things should be done. So it's not just the fitness side of stuff. And we're getting ready to open our group fitness on June 1. So that's going to be a whole nother list of things. And I think we hit that in another question a little bit later, but that's a pretty good start of the must-dos. The other thing is actually, again, walking the wellness floor. What can't be cleaned? And what are you going to have to take off the floor, at least in phase 1? Any kind of the straps that, like for cables and that kind of stuff, we've gotten rid of all the soft stuff that needs to be more disinfected or would be wet if it's cleaned. And we've replaced it with hard-sided handles and that kind of stuff that can be easier wiped down and disinfected and sprayed. The other thing is knowing what kind of disinfectant you're using and how long it has to sit before it takes effect. We have some disinfectants that have a 10-minute dwell time, so we actually have to close down certain areas or do those at night, and then we have other solutions that can be sprayed on and wiped off. So making sure we're using the right stuff at the right time. I'm looking through my notes, make sure I'm covering everything at this point. I think any questions, or I guess let's go on to see who's next there. Kella, I think.
Right. Kella, you want to continue with that?
My perspective is a little bit different because my studios are much smaller than a YMCA. So some of the protocols are a little bit less complicated. I don't have a lot of cardio equipment. We're propping the doors open during open hours to try to minimize contact points and anything that people would need to touch. So making sure that we have a reservation system so that we do not overfill. Most of my classes are small because we're a small boutique studio. So it really limits our numbers. We've taken a number of classes outdoors, and I know it's really hot in Arizona, so we have to be cognizant with some of our clients as to the timing of those classes, but it enables us to serve more individuals in an outdoor space. No touch check-ins so that they don't have to touch or utilize any sign-in procedures. It's all done through their phone, as well as queuing for space on the gym. So right now what I'm doing is I have spaces assigned with numbers. So when they make their reservation, they select their space similar to how you would do at a movie theater with a numbered seat, and you pick your seat. So when you get checked in, you go to that specific area. And most of my classes, I've gone with no equipment. I know we have some biking folks on the call, and that presents a little bit of a problem when you're trying to keep equipment clean. But I have my sanitizer in an actual sprayer, from the lawn and garden store that you would use to spray for bugs or treat your lawn. And so it really gets good coverage when I'm cleaning equipment, but we're not sharing microphones. Some of my other friends who have CrossFit gyms and places that you have to use equipment, they are setting up the equipment in the reserved spaces to minimize the contact and make sure everything is clean. But pretty much all of my classes are bring your own equipment, and I've fully sanitized everything. In larger gym facilities that I've consulted with, I've recommended a bathroom attendant to keep the bathroom areas, because people are going to be touching doors to the toilet facilities and maybe the sink handles and locker areas. And it really is important to keep those areas sanitized, as well as on the gym floor, a specific cleaning attendant that cleans the equipment to help facilitate making sure that it's adequately clean, because we know most people don't clean the equipment well enough when they're working out on the gym floor. And we still do have virtual options, because we have clients that maybe have compromised immune systems or don't feel comfortable coming back to the gym just yet. So we're offering live, virtual, and on-demand options to accommodate those clients. Some gyms are also allowing clients to maintain a suspend on their account.
Great. Thank you so much, Kella. Mary, you want to continue that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with just about everything you two both said. And, I think the big thing is to consider knowing that there are different required guidelines that we need to follow based on state. And so I'll talk a little bit later about this as well, but just be aware that your state has specific guidelines and they vary. And so make sure you know how to access that information. And in addition to that, you can then kind of go, do I want to make my site a little bit more strict, or do I, am I just going to go based on the guidelines? So that's kind of the first and foremost, must do, is make sure that you 100% know what your guidelines are for your state, because they do march out a lot of the things that Paul and Kella just talked about. And so it's just a nice little checklist for you. And you can also see what other states are doing. I know that's what I've been looking at too, is looking at what are other states doing and how do they differ. And so one thing I found interesting too is max capacities when it comes to fitness facilities and gyms. Mm-hmm. And so some states actually have percentages of their gym where they're allowing for capacity. And so that's something that you can consider too, is going, what is the max capacity? What is that percentage that should be open and available? And kind of from there, that's where then you can start looking at your policies and procedures and best practices that you need to start enforcing with your employees, to then start training them, as well as to then for your members to have some awareness and understanding before they get to the gym. So the worst thing that could happen is someone walks into the gym and they're blindsided with all these changes. And so I think another must do is making your members and your folks going into your facilities aware, so then they're not surprised. And so they can be really in the know of how that's going to look. I'm really big on training and making sure that the team members are all on board and fully know what the policies are. And so having a formal handbook and having them even take an opportunity to re-sign it. And so with all of the policies and procedures that your organization or your place that you work or a part of, you already have set in place. I know part of my responsibility is going through with some of my other leaders, and we're actually revising our SOPs and our different policies. And then at that point, we're going to have a formal employee training where our employees are then going to be trained on that material before they can even walk into the front door. And so that kind of just sets the stage for how your members and your folks are going to be interacted with. Certainly, I think, reevaluating equipment space, and, you guys talked about, different equipment that you want to remove, or maybe there's some type of equipment that should actually be thrown away and that is just not available anymore. Also, when it comes down to it, Kayla mentioned this about fitness members. They're not our best cleaners. And so I know at my facility and other fitness facilities that I've operated and ran, it was always kind of the responsibility of those fitness members or those staff members to really be responsible for cleaning. And so with that being said, you might also consider breaks within your schedules where you have, let's say, a roster for folks to be exercising independently or maybe in a group, but then you actually close off certain hours within the schedule where everyone's out except for key essential staff members. And you want to stagger that staff too, so then you're not having group, people connecting, to get too close to each other. But if you can have like a full clean where there's no one there, then you can make sure that that space is getting cleaned frequently and it's being done well. But we do know that, germs are everywhere. And with that too, kind of also just a quick reminder that there's something called cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing, right? And so I know I've been looking into that a little bit, and just know that we shouldn't clean some type of equipment with a really hard chemical. So if you're not sure what to put on your beautiful pieces of equipment that are thousands of dollars, go to your manufacturer and they will give you cleaning tips. And so I know Matrix, I've worked with them a lot back when I was in Wisconsin, and they just put out a beautiful cleaning sheet. And it just talked about basically the facts on what you want to clean, what you don't want to. So go back to your fitness vendors as well as your manufacturers and just make sure that you don't start ruining or degrading the quality of that equipment, because then it could be an additional layer of safety consideration if you're now cleaning off cables and you're now breaking down that cable. And so you could be creating more safety issues by trying to do a good job. So I'll kind of stop there. That was a lot, but there's just a lot to think about. And so don't get overwhelmed. Just, we're going to provide you some resources, and there's a lot of great information out there.
That's a good point that maybe some of us have not thought about. I think, was that you, Paul, who just said that your Precor rep came out and talked to you about that cleaning? Was that comment from you?
Yeah. So not only talking about cleaning, but talking about what pieces may not still need to be on the floor. We actually did remove some pieces to provide more spacing. Some of that's in the free weight area with just moving an extra bench out of the way. Some of that was we're just not even, and some of this I think is, to Kella's point, is based on your volume and your size. We're not doing Bosu balls or Swiss medicine or exercise balls right now just because they don't get cleaned or wiped by the members real well very often. And they're a large surface area, and just making sure that they look clean and ready to go before they're coming back out. And we're going to probably do that in the next phase. So we have about a 4-phase program laid out on how we're going to introduce things back. But they came out and went over cleaning and spacing and all that kind of stuff with us.
Okay, great. All right. So we want to move on to talking about, a lot of us are water aerobics instructors. The next part of that 1A is specific recommendations for pool, water aerobics, lap swimming, and swim lessons. Maybe we might want to not talk so much about swim lessons and lap swimming, but a little bit, but water aerobics kind of comes up. Well, swim lessons is fine too. I mean, that's what I teach. So Kella, you want to, and I looked up a few things myself, but I want to hear from you guys first. Kella, you want to speak on that?
The CDC states that the coronavirus at this time, there's no proof that it is transferable through water. So having an aquatic class should be relatively safe. Again, trying to minimize contact points, like having the fence, if you have a locked pool area or a closed door, propping that open as people come in. And again, assigning them a pool chair to set their items on. Again, not providing towels. I think Paul mentioned that earlier, making sure that they have their own towels, and investing in their own aquatic equipment so that we don't have to clean. It's a relatively inexpensive investment to ask your clients to bring a pool noodle and their weights to class for that. And then again, making sure the area gets clean, the handle, the safety rail as you get in and out of the pool needs to be cleaned after each session. And kind of, people are generally going to space themselves out fairly well for an aquatic class, as long as you're figure out how many people you can accommodate in your pool area and not going over that. People need this space to move their arms and their pool noodles and things around. So that facilitates that process. But bring your own equipment, and assigning a locker and minimizing exposure in the bathrooms, encouraging people to take their showers or change their clothes at home, or having an attendant there to clean after each and every class, and contact points from the clients.
That's great. You know, the things I read, I went to the AEA website, and their recommendations came right from the CDC. And one thing that I probably wouldn't have thought about is, like, you know, we have pool chairs, and like making sure those are wiped down, because like you mentioned, people will put their things on it. Okay, well, so what about the next person? So I think we probably have to be a little bit, you know, cautious about that. The railings, like you said, they did talk about ventilation, which you mentioned, Kella. One person asked, and I know I teach indoors, I mean, do you feel that's the same for indoor pools as outdoors, as far as, I mean, I feel we're in bleach, so I feel pretty good about that. But that being said, you know, what about the indoor? What about, like, people have talked about fans spreading the germs, but like our fans indoors are up high. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Paul?
Go ahead, Paul.
Or either one of you, or either three of you.
So I agree a lot with what Kella was saying. And a lot of what we've talked about with the pool and why it's taking a little bit longer to get open is more around lifeguarding. I think I saw a comment on that too. You know, we're requiring staff to wear masks now. Do you require a lifeguard to wear a mask? Because that becomes an issue if they have to jump in and do a rescue. So those are questions that we're still working through and trying to figure out how that looks. And I mean, if you're doing rescue breathing, you have a mask there to do that with. But if you're wearing a mask and you have to jump in and do a rescue and it gets wet and it's on your face, and that's a whole nother kind of issue there. The water aerobics is safe again, and I tend to agree that you are in a pool of chlorine and you can social distance with that. The locker rooms is the other issue. Right now, our locker rooms are still not fully open. The only part that's open is the restroom facility. And some of that is, again, I think someone mentioned having a locker room attendant. If you've got somebody in there to clean up after everybody and wipe everything down, you're a little bit more safe with that. and the water issue and the virus, chlorinated water that you're swimming in, definitely you're good to go. Having it sit on the floor in the shower and coughing on the shower walls, that's a whole nother issue that I don't think we've gotten a solid enough answer on to feel comfortable with opening our locker rooms at this point. So it's not so much the pool area for us, it's the things that go along with it.
Yeah.
So we are going to open our pools, but our locker rooms aren't going to be open.
Mm-hmm. See, well, the YMCA's are, at least in Arizona, are probably one of the few places that has, you're safe enough to have lifeguards. So we don't, I don't have that issue, but the locker rooms, of course, I just want your opinion, guys, on this equipment. If we are using the styrofoam buoys, the barbells, or the noodle, let's say, and they're in chlorine, and then they put them on the deck. I mean, you feel everyone has to bring their own equipment on that one?
I'll comment on that. One thing I kind of might think a little differently about bringing equipment into the gym. I would actually err on the side of not bringing things into a facility, because you're then exposing potentially more germs into your facility. So I would potentially recommend just considering and just kind of think, maybe you do some dialogue with other folks in your organization, or, you just think about it a little bit to consider what additional things should members or should, clients be bringing into the facility. And I would actually recommend probably considering to avoid bringing additional baggage, and walking into that facility with the least amount of things possible, because that's going to help kind of support not spreading those germs. And when it comes to equipment, considering too, just like you would do in a group exercise class on land, you probably want to be following some of those same types of practices when you're in water, even if the risk is lower, for consistency of your members and your clients. You kind of want them to get into the habit of knowing, okay, this equipment is mine, I'm using it, and then immediately after it's getting cleaned. And so, if you kind of follow that, and I think consistency is one of the biggest things. So, if you have a rule for this one, but then for that one, and it changes, that could get a little confusing to members or your clientele. And so just something to consider with that too. And when it comes to the actual pool and exercising in it, along with that, what if you have lap swimmers, so do you reserve lanes? Do you also be mindful of, if you're sharing that same lane and they're doing some, swim circling, if they're stopping and they're catching their breath, then they're both huffing and puffing. They're increasing, that ventilation. As your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your breathing goes up, and now you're close in contact. So you might even consider closing off or making some adjustments to your lanes, or reserving lanes and doing every other lane. But from what I've seen and what you guys have shared as well, the CDC has posted some great information. ACSM also has kind of linked some information about safety when it comes to water. I know I checked out AAE as well, and they have some good resources too. So I think water is one of the safer places to be, but just because someone's in water, I think doesn't mean they're going to be safe. It's more of the social distancing, and certainly kind of a no-brainer, but I'm just going to say it. Not wearing the mask in the water, because when the mask is wet, it's actually going to cause some difficulty in breathing. And so that's where you really need to be mindful, is if you have a wet mask on, you're not doing anyone any help. And from a lifeguarding standpoint, as Paul mentioned, if you're a lifeguard, you still have to go into that relationship with being that lifeguard of, I'm here to save someone's life. And so I have to be comfortable as that employee to be able to jump into that pool and provide life-saving techniques. But it becomes really challenging in that situation. So yeah, swimming is I think great, because it provides us a little bit of flexibility with the outdoors, as well as that chlorinated water. But we still have to make sure that we're educating our members on the safety with it.
Great, thank you.
So one final thing on the water,
Yeah.
and this is something that we actually even talked about with our land classes in the senior-based classes, and so many of our water classes are older population. That's some of the highest risk population. And so we had a serious conversation about, what do we want to offer up front, and are we going to encourage members to come back who are in the highest risk early, or are we going to put that in a later phase and just kind of give it a little bit more time before we encourage them to come out and be social again, even though it would be socially distant? I don't have the answer for that, but I do think it's a legitimate question on what we're trying to encourage and where the ethical thing to do is on that.
Right. All right. Well, that was a big question, guys, right? So let's move on to number 2. Are changes in facility hours and classes training schedules effective? What are some best practices regarding scheduling? Of course, this is going to be fairly individualized, but I'm sure we've got some good advice on that. Let's see, Mary, you want to start on that?
Sure, absolutely. And I think, a lot of these things I think are going to flow into the questions that we'll be discussing today. Like some of it's
flow into each other.
I won't try to be too repetitive here. But I definitely think when it comes down to it, staggering schedules. And so as I kind of mentioned earlier, when you look at your operations going, okay, how many people are we allowing in our facility? And with that, how much staffing is required for safety and for cleaning? And then at that point, staggering schedules to support that demand, but then also having a backup plan because I know at our facility and others, we're doing, health checks, right? And so what if a staff member is now sick? And so what's your backup plan? So just being kind of mindful of what do you do if your only staff representative to monitor your pool, for example, is now having a fever or is not well. And so considering a decision tree or what is my backup plan in order to support the operations. So you kind of have to think of maybe an A, B, and C type of plan. Just be over prepared because you can anticipate call outs and things like that. I'd also say, being mindful of your designated hours. So do you have to have a full blown set of, servicing hours? Probably not. Maybe you start off and you consider going, what are the peak times? We want to be open and we want to be available for our members and clientele, but maybe you have limited types of hours as well. Certainly any opportunity where you can do virtual sign up. I know Kelly had talked about that, which is awesome. I think what she's doing at that facility is like really cool, where you can actually reserve a certain spot. That's something definitely to consider. Anything ahead of time where you can create signups, even, with the number of people. So people reserve different slots during their, individual exercise routine, and then certainly with group exercise. So you can anticipate how many people are coming as well. And then, if your facility has the availability to do it at any time, prop that door open if it doesn't pose an additional safety risk. More ventilation is going to be helpful. Additionally, if you can take things outside, that is great to do. So outdoors is definitely something to consider. And, with class participants that we discussed, a little bit as well, just being mindful that your class has to be set up in a situation where those folks are only using that specific equipment and they're not sharing. And so that can be tricky if you're doing like a weight class and sometimes they want to go grab an additional set of dumbbells. So I think, just being mindful and preparing yourself for usually those common things that happen when you're teaching. Your guests are going to be going into their habits and their patterns. So maybe you remove additional equipment from the space so they're not just going over. And at any time that you can post very friendly but informative signing that's not like scary or intimidating, just to reinforce your practices and say, hey, this is what we're doing, I think is a really good thing just to keep everyone informed.
Great. All right. Paul, you want to continue with that?
Yeah.
Probably.
So a lot of things, again, like she said, have kind of already been hit on some. We're putting 30 minutes between classes and assigning who's cleaning what equipment. So, and also not having 2 equipment heavy classes back to back. Mm-hmm. So if we've got a more strength type class with equipment, we're not going to then afterwards have another heavy, like even a step class. It's going to be more like a Zumba class where there's no equipment and that kind of stuff. We are no longer a MOSA facility, but we had MOSA and they'd worked with us and they have some stuff out there on spacing in the group fitness room. And they have diagrams for 8, 10, and 12-foot spacing. We're going with a 10-foot lateral and 9-foot vertical, or not, like front to back spacing, and offsetting positions. So we're really trying to give some plenty of space in there. And you can still get pretty good numbers in the classes. And just making sure that, you know what areas you're shutting down to clean at what times. We do have shorter hours, so our classes are going to be more limited as they come back as well. One thing I didn't mention earlier, somebody else kind of hit on, is all of our members are actually signing a new agreement based around the fact that there's liability with COVID in the facility and that kind of stuff, and also a code of conduct that talks about social distancing, which I think will become important with group fitness, and what leaders group fitness are, because they are so powerful. Group fitness instructors are the most powerful people in the building all the time. They're your base of your tribe. And so getting them bought into being cautious about this and leading the so to speak tribe and keeping them cleaning. So I love that we are allowing people to check into class 30 minutes early and capping classes. I love what Kella said earlier about her app where they can actually go on and reserve their spot. We're not there. That's a cool tool. So I think the more that you can do stuff like that, the more the members would thank you and be appreciative of knowing they have their spot in advance and they don't have to line up outside and gather and that kind of stuff. They can go in right before class starts. We're opening our rooms 10 minutes early, but asking them not to gather. So
great points. This is just great stuff, everybody. Kelly, you want to continue with that conversation?
Yes. I think a lot of gym facilities are going to have to operate on smaller class hours, reduced hours, not only to allow for cleaning, but the reality of it is all of the cleaning protocols and preparations are required, in addition to payroll and staffing, is going to put a burden on some of our gym facilities, and they can't afford to have hours where there aren't a lot of people in the facility. So I think you'll see that as your gyms do open. We do have a smaller class schedule right now just because people are a little bit hesitant in some cases because of their compromised immune system returning to classes. So again, we're doing the virtual classes and on-demand classes to allow our clients to still get their workout in, even if they're not comfortable coming into the facility. And somebody mentioned spacing out classes, giving some leeway time, not scheduling hour on the hour every hour, because it doesn't allow enough time to adequately clean the equipment and allow people to come in and out of the spaces without a lot of interaction.
Okay, great. And some of our participants are given some good advice as far as there's a lot of different scheduling, like Sign Up Genius. So you guys, I can also send, I don't know, I can send people the chat too, but if people want to check the chat, there's some good advice coming in from the participants too. There's some comments coming in that I think we should kind of address about fans, and go back to fans again, and about masks. And I know that I had asked Mary to look into that mask thing a little bit. So I don't know if you want to start that up. I don't know if you were able to, because there's a lot. I mean, there's the safety aspect of masks, and there's the breathing and lung capacity aspect of masks as far as exercising. Mary, do you want to kind of start that conversation?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So I'm also a clinical exercise physiologist. So I kind of think of it from a clinical standpoint. And when I used to be sitting in the ex-phys labs and things like that, and when I do metabolic stress testing on people, you think about when you put that mask on, has anyone done a VO2 mask test before where you've actually done that? Okay. So it's pretty uncomfortable, right? And I'm not saying that the mask of the cloth is the same, but you have to think of it as a barrier. Okay. And so for anyone that has any type of, lung condition, or, you even think of asthma, you think of emphysema, you think of, any things like that. They might even have cardiovascular disease, and they might just have shortness of breath. And so oftentimes our folks that come to group exercise class, they are a little bit older depending on the demographic you're looking at. So it is certainly a big concern of mine, with the masks. And so I think when it comes down to it, we're just not sure, with everything. I think it's one of those things where when it comes to a mask, if it's going to restrict your breathing, your ventilation, and cause you some discomfort actually ventilating, it's not going to be helpful. And with some masks, as that mask gets wet, think about all the germs and stuff that can attach to it, right? So I think we also just need to be mindful that and also with the mask, we're trying to avoid contaminating other people, right? And so one of the best things that we can do in that is social distancing, is keeping ourselves separate. If there is a strong, if there's a lot of fear with people and they're wearing masks, what I'd recommend them doing is saying, hey, take your exercise outside. We have this great outdoor class. Let's consider that. Or take yourself in the nature. I know there's a lot of misleading information, or, people seem to be thinking they figured it out. Friends, I don't think they figured it out yet. So I think it's also reader beware. So just because something comes out and you see it in the news or you see it posted, it's kind of take a step back and start thinking rationally about it, and just don't take it as gold. But I do think it's really important for you and for us to be in the fitness industry to keeping up with all of that that's coming out, because guess what? Our members are going to be coming to us, looking at us going, hey, did you see that in the Wall Street Journal? Did you read about that? And so that's where I think ultimately the best thing that we can do is to lean on the CDC and our state guidelines and our professional organizations, such as American College of Sports Medicine and others like that are giving the sound evidence. And if they're not pushing something out based on a formal science-based backed research, I would kind of consider asking yourself a few more questions, take yourself a little bit farther in that decision-making process. And I would also consult with someone else in the industry and go, hey, what are you doing? Because this doesn't seem like it's making sense to me. And so I would be mindful of it. I know here in Arizona, we have a beautiful place to live and the paths are beautiful. I don't wear a mask when I'm running because I choose to run when no one's really running with me. So, but I think you just have to be really mindful of when you're going to wear it. And also, certainly, if it's going to get wet, it's really not safe. And it's actually going to constrict you even more. So I don't know if that's really helpful answer to you guys.
Oh, that's good.
We just don't know all of the answers yet. So just be mindful.
Right. And you made a comment in the chat about ventilation, that ACSM is giving some good guidelines about the CDC, and ACSM have some good guidelines about ventilation. So if Kella or Paul want to say anything else about the fans, but I think maybe that resource I assume is going to address those fans. I hope they address like the overhead and like the group fitness fans. Or Kella or Paul, do you have anything else to say about fans?
I commented in the chat that I haven't seen much research on fans specifically, but recirculated air indoors in general, using AC as a higher risk environment. There's been several studies that I've read about germ transfer when running and biking and passing people on trails, and when you're breathing deeper and exhaling greater, sometimes you push through a wider breadth of space. And I think that's probably why Paul has his group fitness set up a little bit larger. And that's one of the reasons that I have more outdoor classes right now, because it's generally a safer environment for my clients.
Right.
I saw what Kella typed in there as well, and I think she's right on. Yeah, I'm cautious with the fans. I'm trying to keep them off as much as possible, even the ones that are higher up. Mm-hmm. Just keep them off unless it becomes a true heat issue as well.
Right. Right.
Passing out.
So our indoor pool has fans above, and of course in Arizona, indoor pool, it's like, whoa. But maybe just opening the doors for ventilation would be would be a better solution, since we're not 100% sure. And looking up the websites have just been listed in the chat room, and if you don't catch it, it'll be in the follow-up email too. Okay, we're going to move. Thank you, guys. This is great stuff. What is a good communication system for management and staff? And that is going to be just so huge. And you know, there's certainly a lot of gyms who don't have not had the best communication in the past. And so moving forward, I think it's super important. So let's see who, Paul, you want to just go ahead and start on that communication? You probably have a good system in place.
Yep. So our communication starts in a couple different things. We have a leader on duty or a director on duty at all times in our buildings currently. And anyone who comes to work, they report to that person. They get their temperature check, and they have to answer a series of questions related to any signs or symptoms, or if they've been around anyone who's had signs or symptoms or been diagnosed with COVID. And this is our opportunity to talk about anything that's happening today, or anything that's changed, or anything that we need to be aware of, any new, because like I said, we're opening things in phases. So it's an opportunity to say, hey, this is going to be phasing in. We're starting to do this again, but it's intentional one-on-one conversation with every person who's reporting to work. And that's all departments. And then we're actually doing weekly Zoom meetings with all staff upon close of the facilities, and making sure that everybody's getting information directly from our COO, and that they're hearing it firsthand, and it's not the trickle down or old telephone game effect of oh, this is what this person said and it gets changed and that kind of stuff. So we're really being intentional about making sure that the communication is coming through clear, that it's coming through in multiple ways. Of course, we're also doing email to all of the staff and that kind of stuff, but nothing replaces a mass-to-mass conversation, right?
Mass-to-mass conversation, right? You were waiting to give us that one, weren't you? You were saving that in your pocket. All right, Kella, I know you have, facilities and staff, so.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing, as we planned and we got that okay to open up, we did a social media blast with a number of communications about what services were going to be offered. You can also do a town hall, a live meeting where people can attend, but also communicating with your members who don't attend your town hall via Zoom to be able to access the replay, send them a link and email, post it on your Facebook page, put it on your YouTube. The more contacts that you can have with people, the better. Mary talked about signage, and I think signage in your facility is really important, reminding them about when they should be wearing their mask, what your policy is, hand washing, protocols for checking in. And it's going to take people a while to figure out what the policy is. And so you need to keep communicating. In terms of employees, and as an HR professional, I cannot emphasize enough, giving your employees the freedom to stay home when they're not feeling well, encouraging them that if they have any signs or symptoms to let you know, but have, as Mary mentioned, a plan in place, a sub list, people that are willing to jump in and teach a class if someone's not feeling well, because you don't want those people in your facility if they're not well. And there is actually an act that allows them 80 hours of paid leave for coronavirus. That's for themselves, but also if they came in contact with an individual in their family, or they have a high-risk person in their family or living situation, they can get up to 80 hours of paid leave. And this is even for small businesses, studios even of my size. And there's already been court precedent on this. There was a facility in Tucson that denied an employee benefits and was sued and had to pay back pay to their employee for coronavirus leave. So encouraging people to stay home and communicating if they have been exposed.
Great, that's a good point. I'm glad you knew about that, Kella. Mary, do you want to continue on that? Anything else to say about communicating?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to kind of reiterate and kind of confirm what Paul said is, having one goal of delivering a message is so important. And so I know in my organization, what we do and what I've done in other organizations is you have that information delivered in the same pattern, the same format. You have it in writing because people are going to hear one thing and then they're not going to remember. They might be triggered by something that they heard early on in the conversation. They might not listen to the rest. And we don't have really good retention, especially when it's a critical situation and we might have some fear, anxiety, even just coming back, right? And so one thing is it's really important to have it in writing and send it out like in a PDF format, have it sent by the same person. So then they know that they're getting this information from Mary Stouter, for example. Also, having updates frequently. So a weekly update would be potentially beneficial just to say, hey, this is what's going on. And maybe there's no update other than, you're doing a great job. We're going to keep pressing through. And I also think it's really critical to, also avoid sharing too much information that might scare people or might be unnecessary. So if you're in a leadership position or you're that operator or business owner, there might be things that you hold to your chest that are not critical for your team member to know. Let you take care of that, and then you can proceed with delivering those policies and procedures, doing the training. That's what you are as that leader. And so you want to take away any of that unnecessary fear. And so just be mindful of what you communicate. And just because your team members are trained a certain way doesn't mean the member or client needs to know all of the backstory. And so that's one thing I think that's really critical, as well as having an FAQ, a frequently asked questions. So anticipate the questions that your employees are going to ask. Anticipate the questions that your members are going to ask, and have it posted and have it available online or somewhere that they can refer to it. And take some time to look at it before they enter back into that work relationship, or they decide that, hey, come to the gym. Might not be for me right now because this is how this gym is going to operate, and maybe I'm just not comfortable with that. And just a couple more things, establishing. I think Kella talked beautifully about it. when it comes to like sick time and all of that. But establishing what's the best way to communicate with your employees. How do they respond to it? There's a lot of apps that you can use, WhatsApp, type of app. There's different communication channels depending. Does your employee base have email? Do they not? So that's where you want to think about it too. And then certainly if there's any opportunity where you can do touchless time cards, or if you're tracking, how are you going to count how many people are in your group exercise class? Just think of those types of things. Are there ways that you can do that without having that pen out? And having someone, be signing into their time card, by touching some type of keypad. I know that we've been looking at different ways that it's actually just, you bring your badge up to it, or they can do it on their own personal phone. And so, so many different things you can look into. But I think the message is communicate, but don't over communicate, because over communication can actually be pretty fearful for people. So just be mindful of how those folks are going to receive that information and what ultimately you want them to be empowered with knowing.
I really like that you said that. That's a good point, because there's just so many extremes of emotions going on with people, and we want to stay positive. We want to stay safe. We want to keep everybody informed, but we don't want to, panic people and make people fearful. But whatever their choice is, come to the gym, don't come to the gym. That is that's their prerogative. So just staying positive, and that's what, this Fit Pro Connection weekly thing has been. I just love that everyone is positive. There's no negativity. There's just information and dialogue. And that's what our community, our tribe of fitness professionals is all about. And we need to continue that as we get back into the gyms. And we need to take care of ourselves as well as our members and our clients. And that leads to the next question. And we've covered it a little bit. it's how are we planning to protect our staff throughout the reopening? And I think we've touched on a little bit, but if any of the three of you want to say anything else about how you're planning on protecting your staff, then let's continue. Let's talk about that.
I think training people and ongoing learning, we're trial and error. Sometimes as you open, something might not work. And so you have to shift gears and figure out what's going to work best for your employees and your customers as we navigate through this uncharted territory. Having regular meetings, like Paul mentioned, they're doing weekly meetings just to check in with your staff to make sure everyone's educated on what needs to happen, if anything has changed or they need to make adjustments, that you're aware of that. And again, constant communication with your customer base to see if you're adequately serving them and what their concerns are, and if there's anything that they need to be trained on, because you do have to train them on the new policies and practices. One of the things we're doing is we used to have pens and things at the front counter for people to take flyers. All of that is not there anymore. And I think someone mentioned earlier about not bringing bags in. I've told the clients, unless it's equipment that you're using in class, leave your items, if at all possible, in your car. Don't bring it into the gym. Leave your lunch in the car, and trying to limit the amount of things and the touch points, break rooms and lockers and things that just complicate making sure that you have a safe environment. Janice, we can't hear you.
Oh yeah, I muted myself because Joanna thought maybe I had background noise after I'm telling everybody else to mute themselves. Thank you, Kella. Mary, did you have anything else on that?
Yeah, I agree with both you guys. I mean, it's just awesome to hear, like, first of all, the consistency of like what the fitness industry is doing. Like, it makes me feel really good. I don't know about you guys in the call, but we've got a lot of smart people out there, and we really care about our members and our employees. And I think that's awesome. And so I know some of the fitness people are some of the nicest, loving people I know. And so I know that we're going to do a good job. I'll say that. Also, I think it's important to kind of comment and note that we're in a constant stage of learning, right? And reassessing and refining. And these guidelines are coming out and they're getting, revised, they're getting pulled back, new science comes out. And so I think it's important also to know that, gosh, like when you create, updated procedures, just know that unfortunately the work's not done. It's going to be a constant stage of what I call a SWOT analysis, looking at what's going well, strengths, what are the weaknesses in your setup, what are the opportunities to improve, and what is really threatening the success of keeping your members safe, and ultimately focusing on the safety over the services. And I know that's hard when we're an organization where we want to make some money, but ultimately just kind of, reminding everyone that it's a hard situation, it's tough, and everyone's struggling, but first and foremost, safety number one. And so just focusing on making sure that you're really focusing on the safety of your employees, and then the members as well, in that tandem relationship, because that's number one. And so we might have to pull back a little bit of what we'd like to do just because it's not appropriate. And I think that's where staff members feel valued, they feel respected, and offering a voice as well. And so there's a lot of educated people out there, and they might not be in that position where they have the mic. And so I'd also recommend considering how are you going to be able to communicate and just like work with your team on how do I receive that information in some type of way that is really like open, and you're being mindful of people's feelings, but also knowing that, some of the things that they say, we might not do that, but just being mindful that people are going to have opinions as they should, and just listening because people like to be heard.
Right. Good point. Paul, anything else on that?
I think the only thing I would add is, and I can't believe we really haven't talked about it yet, is just hand washing. The amount of hand washing that's going on. I'm sure everyone's got dry, cracked hands and is using lotion like crazy. And I saw someone comment too that they were purchasing the no-touch thermometers. That's what we're using, the no-touch thermometers. And before we take staff temperatures, we make sure that we disinfect our hands. Staff wash their hands as soon as they come in. We're washing the kids' hands all day long. And so all the precaution stuff, and I think that's just one that maybe we hadn't spent a lot of time talking about yet, is the amount of hand washing that goes into all this too.
Absolutely, and facilities making sure they have enough proper sanitizers and soaps on hand. Have that backup and have that readily available. So, and making sure whoever's in charge, making sure who's in charge of making sure you have the backup. I think that's important too. I think that the last question, number 5, we're running over an hour here, but it's great stuff. And anybody who wants to, do we want to have another conversation? We have this forum weekly. Do we want to talk about this again, or put in the chat, or reply, send me an email. If any of you send me an email, I always reply to you. If I don't, I'm probably, someone killed me. So I love to communicate with everybody. So please, any suggestions you have for future forums? We've talked about music in the past. Well, this is the second time of reopening the gym. So, any ideas are welcome. This is, of course, a great chat, and we can continue it. The next question, and I think we can probably just put it in the follow-up email or in the chat, but I'm gonna say it anyway, or ask it anyway. What specific resources have you been following or plan to implement in your reopening? So, Mary, I know you've mentioned a couple. You want to say them again, or any others that we didn't mention?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been following a lot just because I'm interested, of course, and it's a part of my role. But I'm not sure if anyone checks out the ACSM. I hate to keep saying American College of Sports Medicine, but honestly, they're awesome. I'm a little biased, but I'm an ACSM certified professional, but they have basically pulled in just about everything you want to know into one spot. So how cool is that? So I can send that link in the chat. But if you even just Google, ACSM, COVID-19 reopening, and let me even just put this in here. I'll just put this in the chat right now. And they link you to basically everything you want to know from the CDC. And it's constantly being updated. So this is probably the best resource that I found. Also, IRSHA is amazing as well. So you'll notice that IRSHA is linked to a lot of these resources in addition to the CDC. And so I loved, IRSHA has this really great commentary about the 18 considerations that you want to be mindful of before reopening your facility. And so you're going to look through that list and you're going to go, whoa, like this webinar or this Zoom call basically hit it all. So it's just like a good checklist. There's a ton of amazing resources. I did a link earlier in the chat. ACSM actually put together a little PDF that has all the links on there too. And so you can actually just download that PDF, save it to your file, and then you can just reference those links. So they actually put it onto a PDF too. So those are some great things. I know that I've enjoyed looking at that. There's a ton of information out there, but I feel like it's pretty reputable. So definitely want to share that with you guys.
Great, thank you so much. And I sent Mary, I shouldn't laugh. Lifetime Fitness has a 400-page document for their employees. So does anyone on here work for Lifetime and has read that 400-page document yet? All right. Okay, Paul, anything else you want any other resources from you?
The only other thing I'm going to say is there's the vendors, again, we've talked about, but use your vendors. Anybody that you work with and your software, your equipment vendors, your group fitness vendors, like this call. This is a great resource. We've done tons of these with YMCA professionals throughout the country and department areas, so you can get as specific as you want. There's some specifically around group fitness, some around the healthy living floor, some around childcare, some around aquatics. So that's what we've been using a lot of, and everybody's using their different standards. I did find it interesting that even within some states and organizations of YMCAs, they're able to open some locations, but not others based off the local government. Like certain counties, even within states, are closed still, but the state might be open, so they can open certain wise, but not the others. And so I think that, using your local government too, and trying to figure out what they're wanting, and making sure that you're at least doing the minimum that's required.
Absolutely. Good point. Kella, anything else for any other resources?
The only thing that hasn't been mentioned that came to my mind is that you may have members that have been out of work or are struggling financially, but as fitness professionals, we know how much health and wellness can really help our overall well-being and in terms of stress reduction. And facilities can offer a pool to provide monies to maybe members who cannot afford to restart their membership. So if you have members that are not struggling and want to donate to the membership grant of some kind, you have a pool that they can donate, and you can utilize those monies to give scholarships to your other members. So members taking care of members, and it's really a great way. I've seen a great response from gyms that are doing this for their members to reach out and help their neighbor.
Thank you, Kella. I was just typing in the chat and to Larry, so I was a second behind there. Thank you. I can't multitask as good as you can, Kella, or Mary, or Paul. So this has been amazing. I think everybody will agree. We've had some great chats in the chat room. We've posted a lot of things. All three of our speakers have also put things in the chat. I will send that in a follow-up email to all of you in the next couple days, including the resources, all that stuff. We'll go into any closing thoughts in a second, but I definitely need to do a little self promotion here, and just remind you that go to fitnessfest.org/Arizona if you want to check out our September event. We're not relaunching yet because we want to be sensitive. So, but everything is still there. So check it out. If you've never been, it's an amazing, amazing event. And then a lot of you may need some CECs. So we just started some live stream workshops for continuing education, but also just to stay educated, to stay informed. And the two workshops, live stream workshops that we've got coming up on May 30th are things that are going to be very pertinent to your careers, we think. So that's why we chose them. We've got social media, 20 questions you should be asking and maybe aren't. So if you've got a business, personal training or whatever, and you're not savvy enough with social media, that is definitely where it's at. And then at 12:30 on May 30th, Transformer Boot Camp. And so for whether it's outdoors, indoors, virtually, and like was mentioned before, we're going to continue to do virtual stuff. We all want to be together in person, but this Transformer Boot Camp talks about indoors, outdoors, virtual. So check that out. Tyler's going to put it in the chat. It's fitnessfest.org/livestream. And so that's May 30th. Our Mind, Body, Spirit retreat. I'll send you that information. We got a couple. We're all going to need a Mind, Body, Spirit retreat. For those of you, we speak Oracle, Arizona, September 18th to the 20th. If you've never been to Oracle, it's just a beautiful. Probably. Have you ever been to the retreat center there, Mary? No. Yeah. It's funny. No one ever
Where
has.
isn't it? Can you say it again? Where it is? We have spiritual. Wellness over at our facility, and we just have I just love it. But where is it called? It's
El Rancho Robles. Is that what it is, Joanna? El Rancho. It's been so long since I've been promoting it. El Rancho Robles Resort Center in Oracle, and you just drive up, and it's just a beautiful ranch. So
wow,
just all these open areas to do outdoor yoga and meditation and all that. So. Yeah,
I've been in Tucson for almost 3 years, but I still feel like I'm brand new. So I don't know like hardly anything.
Yeah.
right now.
Well, Arizona is such an interesting state, you know. I mean, you can be snow skiing, water skiing, and hiking and everything all in one day. So, so we'll put that in the chat. We'll do a follow-up email. Any final chats? Any final comments from my three speakers? Go for it, you guys. Paul, you want to start? Any final comments?
This is just a journey, and I think that that's the way that we're trying to approach it is be cautious. It's always easier to give more later, so I think that's part of our phased approach is we'd rather start with less and be able to give back straps and BOSU balls as we go rather than have everything out and then be like, oh, this is a problem and that's a problem. Same thing with like into the group fitness. We'd rather limit capacity and then be able to open it up. It's always harder to go the other way. So just enjoy the journey, right? We're all in this ride together. And like Mary said, I'm impressed on how the fitness industry in general is coming together. And it's really pretty unified voice and how we're going about this, which is cool.
Yeah, we have been amazing and resilient, and we will continue that. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. Mary, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say be flexible with yourself and your teams and your members because we're not going to get it right every time. And it's just like it's a fluid state right now. And I think everyone has the best intentions in mind. I like to believe that. And so I think as we kind of explore this next chapter here with how we're going to be working in these facilities and interacting, just to be kind to each other and just know that there's a lot of stuff going on and you just don't know how someone's interacting. And so just adding that extra layer of kindness, I think can go a long way. And at the end of the day, if we focus on our people, our employees and our members, we're going to do it right. We're going to figure it out. And I know I'm confident in that. It's just going to look different and it might continue to look different, but that's okay. So let's support each other and be advocates to our industry and encourage our members that we're doing it for them and we want them to continue to stay healthy and really pursuing their fitness journeys for life. So I think we're going to do it.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. Kella?
In addition to kindness, along the same lines, giving grace to individuals, not everyone's going to agree with the protocols or your recommendations in terms of masks, no masks, gym open, what's available, and try to be patient with one another. Continue to learn, show up for things like this with Janice. She's been providing these each and every week. Continue to learn and grow because it's going to help you better serve your members and be more successful in the long run.
Excellent. Well, everybody, it is happy hour in Arizona. So I'm happy to stay on the call if anybody has any more chats or want to talk to each other in the chat. But I'm officially going to stop the recording. But yes.